Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
Kiyomi, his only current weakness I can think of right now is that he needs a sh*t ton of mana to sustain the item. If we can continuously draw out the fight, we'll be able to open up an opportunity to kill him. Shiro suggested. Big sis, can't you use that item of yours? Kiyomi asked. It doesn't work that way. When the Executioner's Requiem is activated, it's hardly affected by any items. Unfortunately, if I'm right, the sealing incantation is not one of the items that can stop him right now. Shiro frowned while trying her best at moving her body. But with the second skill activated, once she got a grasp of her movements, she'll fall right down again. But we're not in any state to fight now, are we? Kiyomi asked. Their only saving grace was that Shiro had activated her Fey illusions so that there were multiple copies. She made sure that each of them was acting the same so that Blythe wouldn't be able to find the real bodies. I know, but that isn't the same for our abilities. What I want to do is use you as a catalyst to use my magic. My body's a bit damaged right now, so if I try to delay him, it would have too many negative repercussions. However, if I funnel it through your B-class physique, I should, in theory, be able to output slightly more power than I do now. But that's only a theory, so I'm not sure how it would work. Shiro furrowed her brows while moving them into the shade. I'm not too sure about the details, but I trust you. Kiyomi replied seriously. Nodding her head, Shiro reached out and pressed her hand against Kiyomi's back. Closing one of her eyes, she sent a single strand of mana to scout out Kiyomi's body for the most optimal pathway. Since she's a warrior-type class, the pathways might be a little different compared to what a mage has. Shiro thought while mapping out the pathways. Since warriors focused on physique, their pathways would be tougher than what a mage would have, but at the expense of fine-tuned control. This was why the mages were able to use large-scale destruction spells while warriors could only use domains or body refinement. If she wanted to use Kiyomi as a catalyst for her spells, she'll need to adapt to her channels so that it fits to a certain degree. However, once she finished scanning Kiyomi's body, she could only curse her luck. Damn it! Why the hell are you so good at refining your body? Your channels are absolutely huge, and they're amazing for huge bursts of power. But for our situation, this is the worst that I can ask for. Shiro sighed. Then are we done for? Kiyomi furrowed her brows. Nope, Shiro grinned. Since your mana channels are huge, it means I'll have to pump more mana and have a harder time at controlling it. Thankfully for us, I'm good at controlling a huge amount of mana. If she couldn't do this, then each spell would have literally thrashed her links. By decreasing their final output and power potential, she can make it safer for herself. Otherwise, a single spell created by over 150,000 points of INT would cause much more damage than what she had shown so far. If she had to describe it, it would literally be a natural disaster. Focusing her mind, she pushed mana into Kiyomi's body through her palms. URG. Feeling the foreign mana enter her body, Kiyomi flinched from the sensation. A Tier 3 magic circle started to flicker in front of her as Shiro was trying to use her body to construct the magic circle. Come out wherever you are. I'll make your death a painless one. Blythe howled in the background while sending countless attacks towards all of her clones. Whenever an attack hit, a building would be almost erased from the damage. Since Shiro could spare a portion of her focus to make sure more illusions were being created in different locations, she was able to avoid the fate of being blown up for now. Come on, just a little more. She urged in her mind since she knew that she had the potential to make a Tier 4 magic circle despite being in C-class. With her INT stat and Kiyomi's B-class physique, this should be a feat that they could achieve. The magic circle flickered a little more as the fourth ring started to form around the outside, symbolizing its transition into a Tier 4 spell. Construction complete. Shiro muttered with a grin when the fourth ring stabilized itself. Tier 4 spell, Frozen Chandelier. Asterisk, KRRRR. A blizzard surrounded the area that was affected by the Executioner's Requiem's second ability. Dark clouds gathered in the skies as the temperature dropped rapidly. Within mere moments, the city was turned into a frozen landscape where there was hardly anything that wasn't frozen. Breaking though the clouds, a giant ice chandelier could be seen, glistening in the light. Each branch of the chandelier would reflect and amplify the light, blinding anyone that saw it for a split second. As the person who was closest to the chandelier, Blythe couldn't avoid this fate either. Gah! Shielding his eyes, Blythe looked away from the chandelier. Asterisk cling 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 cling. Just as he did this, chains erupted from the ground and stabbed towards him. Each one was reinforced with celestial path, and thus cutting off any spells that he wanted to use in defense. Quickly making a solid clone and trading places with it, Blythe made sure that he wasn't caught for too long since he knew the kind of danger he'll be in. Despite his attitude, he made sure to memorize everything that Morthel had told him about Shiro. Since her fighting style seemingly revolves around sealing off the mana usage of her enemies, he'll need to make sure that he wasn't caught for too long. TCH, annoying. He clicked his tongue. Maneuvering around in the air, he avoided the chains while sending out attacks to repel them when he wasn't able to dodge. Activating a few domains that increased his magic resistance and ice resistance, he flicked his wrist and created several fire lances and sent them flying towards the sky. Shattering into a rain of fire arrows, he targeted all the clones. But when he saw that none of the arrows managed to hit his target, annoyance flooded his mind while his chest heaved in anger. That's good. If I can keep this up, he should be running out of mana in 10 to 15 minutes give or take. Shiro estimated. Thankfully, the Executioner's Requiem wasn't at stage 4, or else it would truly be almost impossible to fight against unless one is prepared. That's because at stage 4, the user gains the ability to regenerate mana rapidly. This makes it so that the previous 3 abilities basically become passives since the regeneration was able to almost offset the cost. Thankfully, I found this item in the early stages. If I find it later, I might not be able to fight it unless my links are healed. Shaking her head, she continued to make sure that the Tier 4 spell continued without any problems. Since she was doing this through a catalyst, there were bound to be a few unnatural fluctuations that she'll have to sort out quickly. Not only that, but the person acting as the catalyst would be under quite some pressure as well. Say, my queen. Nimue called out. Sup? So I understand what stages 1, 2, and 4 are, but you've never said anything about stage 3. What happens if he reaches stage 3 during this fight? Nimue asked curiously. If stage 3 happens, his lethality would reach a whole new level. That is because the ability he gains is the ability to bind and reduce the target's armor to 0 should one of his illusions come into contact. Once that happens, a simple punch from him could be life-threatening. Not to be the jinx, but I think there's a high possibility in him achieving stage 3 considering how things are going right now. If I remember, you told me that the more the user gives themselves up, the more the relic takes advantage. Blythe seems pretty pissed right now, so it might be dangerous. Oh, don't worry. I've fought someone who used this relic before. I can say that it's almost guaranteed that he'll hit stage 3 soon, so I'm trying to drain as much mana away as I can before that stage is reached. Continuing the cat and mouse game with Blythe, Shiro kept an eye on him to make sure she catches the moment he's about to reach stage 3. At that moment, his spells would be down for a little while, so it was the perfect moment to relocate themselves. Asterisk, boom. Now, canceling her tier 4 spells, Shiro grabbed Kiyomi into the rift and dashed away. Blythe had reached stage 3 of the Executioner's Requiem, and the risks had just multiplied by several folds. Moving through the buildings as quickly as she can, Shiro made sure to glance back every now and again to see Blythe's progress in transitioning to stage 3. During this stage, the user's mind would be corrupted by quite a large amount, making it so that they will risk almost everything to fight their enemy. It becomes a situation where it's either you die now or I die trying. You know, big sis, we can get away quickly if you let me carry you. Kiyomi reminded since Shiro had just taken the initiative to grab her hand and drag her away. Staying silent, Shiro turned and looked at Kiyomi with a deadpan expression. Sighing softly, Shiro hopped onto Kiyomi's back. Is this okay? She asked since she didn't want to make Kiyomi too uncomfortable. Yeah, that's fine. Kiyomi nodded. Crouching down slightly, she dashed forwards. The force created from this caused the ground underneath them to crack and shatter. While they were focused on running away from Blythe, his actions of using the corrupted relic has caught the attention of everyone who's in the current war. They had seen 2 huge tier 4 spell circles expand out with the second creating a huge ice chandelier. Both the first and second prince were confused since they hadn't sent anyone of that caliber to fight their brother. Understanding that it must be the work of a third party, both princes made their way towards Blythe. After all, he must have plenty of good loot in his inventory. They also wanted to make sure that they see Blythe die, since his domains are one of the most annoying things to deal with, especially when they place several debuffs on you, and it continues to stack. As for Shiro's party, after regrouping with everyone, they made their way to the orphanage. During their trip, they clearly felt a huge burst of mana from the north and saw Shiro's fight with the third prince. After all, ice chains were one of Shiro's defining traits whenever she used her ice magic. Damn, since when was Shiro able to cast spells like that? Madison muttered after seeing the Tier 4 spell. I think she might have gotten help. Remember her links? I don't think she can cast such a spell without negative repercussions. Lyrica frowned in worry. Do you girls want to go over and help her? Sylvia asked since she was concerned about Shiro's situation. No. If you go now, it may hinder Mum instead. For her to need to use a Tier 4 spell, it must mean that she's in quite a lot of danger and she'll need to focus. Mum's one of those people that fights really well when she's unrestrained. Lysandra shook her head. After all, she knew how much Shiro cared for the group, so if they're in any danger, it would only distract her. But even so, we can't just run away knowing that she's in danger. Sylvia shook her head. What if we do this? I can construct a spell, but I'll be needing your help. It's based on a theory that I found during my time in the library. Aram suggested. What theory is it? The theory is that through using multiple people as checkpoints and have them participate in constructing a spell, they'll be able to add their own sections and grant effects to the final outcome. I'm thinking that since all of us have empowering skills, we can perhaps construct a spell that contains all of them and target it at Shiro. Aram explained. That could work, but can we even reach her? The distance is quite far. Lyrica frowned. Don't worry about that. I can do it since I have the most speed out of all of us. Lysandra volunteered while pointing at her angel wings. All right, I'll see if I can make the spell. Aram nodded. Focusing her mind, she pushed her hands in front of her. An empty set of rings appeared while spell runes started to carve themselves within the empty spots. Sylvia, since you're the support, try add some buffs into the spell. Lyrica said while looking over at Sylvia. I'll try. Walking up to the magic circle, Sylvia reached out with her hand and attempted to add her own magic into it. However, the moment she did that, the circle destabilized and shattered apart instantly. The force had sent Sylvia stumbling backwards as Chunyu quickly caught her so that she didn't hurt herself. The same happened to Aram, but she stabilized herself before anyone could help. That's a bit troublesome. It seems like the main problem is compatibility along with some other factors. Aram frowned since she had analyzed the spell the moment it destabilized. The main cause was due to their mana fighting each other for dominance over the actual spell and caused it to shatter. TCH. This idea's a bust. She sighed while dusting herself. So we can't do anything then? Lyrica asked. Unfortunately, no. Aram shook her head as the party made their way to the orphanage with disappointment. When they arrived, they were slightly surprised to see the elders along with both princesses treating the wounded while the fourth prince escorted them to the closest evac zone. A big sis you came. Siri called out after seeing the party. Yeah, Shiro told us to come here while she made some trouble up in the north. With how things are going, it looks like she's fighting third brother. Lyrica nodded her head. That's slightly concerning. From what we saw from here, the Tier 4 spell earlier wasn't a product of his class. The most likely situation is that it's an item. CYRL frowned. Before they could say anything else, a dense amount of mana washed over the city as they looked over at the fight in shock. Asterisk, boom. Air. I don't think third brother is supposed to have that kind of power. Cyril said, while looking at the elders with concern. Cyril, Civi, you two go support Shiro since you two are the highest level supports. Shiro's party, you lot stay here for now since it's too dangerous. I doubt Shiro would want you in harm's way. Instead, you can help us with the injured and escort them to the evac zones. One of the elders instructed. Both princesses, Cyril and Civi, nodded their heads and obeyed the order. Giving the rest of the party some orders, the elders had Lysandra, Cyril, and Civi make their way to the north. With Lysandra's speed and ease of transport, this would be the most efficient way. Grabbing both princesses by the hips, Lysandra spread her wings and flew towards the north. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. Taking a deep breath, Shiro wiped the sweat from her head and looked towards Blythe, who had just finished transitioning to stage 3. With Item's second skill back up, it was hard to run away effectively. If we're sneaky enough, do you think we can get out of his area of effect? Kiyomi asked. I'm not too sure. Thankfully, he hasn't found us yet because of my skill, but I wouldn't count on it. Shiro replied while trying to stand up. Forcing her body against the wall, she slowly nudged herself up on her feet, only to fall back down again. TCH. We'll have to delay him again. She frowned. Activating Frozen Chandelier once more, Shiro knew that this couldn't continue for too long since there was a limit to how much she can use Kiyomi as a catalyst. With little knowledge on how much mana Blythe has, it was a gamble to continue this way. However, during this, she sensed Lysandra's presence coming closer. Lisa, can you hear me? Shiro said into the earpiece. Mom? Yeah, I hear you. I'm coming in with some support. Lysandra replied. Don't. If you come closer, you'll lose control of your body. Shiro replied quickly. What? After understanding the situation, Lysandra frowned and turned to the two princesses. Mum said that Blythe has obtained an item called Executioner's Requiem. The moment we enter his range, we'll lose control of our body and may be killed on sight. That's bad, isn't it? Cyril raised an eyebrow. Of course it is. Civi rolled her eyes. Say, sis, you think we can clear the debuff if we bolster Shiro's resistances and use cleanse on her? Cyril asked. Since they're both supports, with Cyril being a combat medic and Civi being an enchantress, they were able to provide both healing and buffs. I'm not sure. We don't know the nature of his item. Civi shook her head. On the other side, Shiro's eyes brightened after hearing what Cyril has said. I think we can kill Blythe. She muttered with a grin. Lisa, ask them too how often they can use cleanse. If it's within 5 seconds, we can win. I have several cleanse skills, but even after chaining everything, there will be a 3-second gap before I can restart the chain. Cyril replied after hearing Shiro's question. Furrowing her brows, Shiro wondered if it's feasible. Since the Executioner's Requiem refreshes the debuff every 5 seconds, once she cleanses it, she'll be free to control her body properly for the next 4 seconds. However, for a high-intensity fight like this, that 3-second gap where Cyril can't cleanse is extremely dangerous. Are you able to time it so that you can have a 1-second gap between each cast? That way, we can somewhat offset the delay. Shiro suggested. I can try, but I can't guarantee anything. Cyril shook her head. That's fine. By the way, is your cleanse skill an area of effect or single target? Since I'm a combat medic, my skills affect the party. When I use my cleanse, everyone gets it. Cyril smiled. Great. That way, Kiyomi can help us as well. Since Lisa is in the party, she can give you an invite. Shiro said while glancing back at Blythe, who was looking around in anger. Currently, he was taking out his annoyance on the bystander adventurers that were unfortunately caught in the range of the item's effect. Using the 3rd stage of his skill, he was popping the heads of adventurers as if they were pockets of air on a sheet of bubble wrap. Get out here, Blythe shouted out while crushing a man's head in his hands. Oh yikes. Shiro muttered, seeing the effectiveness of the 3rd skill. Say, sis, if you whisper to him all seductively like before, do you think you can get him out of his anger? Kiyomi asked curiously. Blurg. Hell no. Shiro rejected instantly. The previous action was but an impulse to extend the time for Kiyomi so that she could properly finish off Morthal. If she didn't do that and stop Blythe from using a domain, there was the slim chance that Morthal could survive. Seeing the pure disgust on Shiro's face, Kiyomi was slightly surprised. Didn't you always pull stunts like this before, big sis? She asked. Previously, whenever she fought, she would always throw her enemy's mental state off through provocative talk. You forget? Memories. Shiro replied, blaming it on amnesia. Fair enough. Anyways, Lisa, try to make your way here without being detected by Blythe. Cyril, use your cleanse skills so that we can group up and practice on the timings while we can. Shiro instructed. Got it. After Cyril casted her cleanse skill on the party, Lysandra dived low and started to fly towards Shiro's location. Since she made sure that she was close to the ground in order to avoid detection, their speed was much slower due to the obstacles. Once they regrouped, Cyril healed both Shiro and Kiyomi just to make sure that they were in top form. So what's the plan? Cyril asked since she wasn't too sure as to how they were going to approach Blythe. You see, explaining the details regarding his abilities and how they should counter them, Shiro proposed that she send some clones to harass him first while they get the timing down. Once she was sure that the group understood what they were doing, Shiro activated Fey illusions while Cyril practiced her timings. Meanwhile, the first prince was observing the situation from a distant building. Shiro seems to be fighting third brother, but she's using illusions instead. Nelder muttered while looking at the scene from outside of the item's effect range. Also, do you know why Kiyomi is with Shiro? I didn't get any word of this. He asked with a frown. I don't know what the branch master is thinking. Perhaps they decided to form a partnership considering the danger of the third prince. One of the Rising Sun executives theorized. Perhaps. Either way, let's wait for now. Second brother is nearby, and it would do us no good if we go in too soon. It would only give second brother the opportunity to attack us. Plus, from what I can see, if we get into his range of effect, we may lose control of our bodies. The first prince said while looking at all the adventurers that were affected by the item. From their struggling expressions and collapsed bodies, he knew that going in would be tantamount to suicide. That being said, how can Shiro and Kiyomi move effortlessly? He frowned since he could see the duo, Illusion, fighting against Blythe constantly. Perhaps they used an item to counter the third prince's skill? The executive suggested. Whatever it is, are you able to get me in contact with Kiyomi? It would be good to get some information from her right now. Understood. ####. Suddenly feeling her phone vibrate, Kiyomi pulled it out and saw that it was one of her subordinates calling her. Big sis, my subordinate's calling me. I suppose it's the first prince's doing. Kiyomi called out. Emin, we'll take the call. And while you're at it, why not feed them some false information? I'll tell you what to say. Shiro looked over. Sure. Pulling out her own phone, Shiro started to type down what Kiyomi should say. Hello. Kiyomi answered. Branch Master, you're fighting the third prince right now? The subordinate asked. Yeah, what of it? The first prince is wondering how you can move in the area. From what we can tell, everyone is struggling. Oh that, you just need to use a debuff cleansing skill every 5 seconds to counter the item. Is that all? Well, I suppose it doesn't harm me for you to know more. You see, I found out that his item has 3 skills so far. The first is solid illusions. The second is this zone that you can see right now, which makes it so that you can barely control your body. The third is the worst since it reduces all of your armor and defense to 0 and could kill you instantly. Kiyomi reported while looking at Shiro with confusion. She wasn't sure as to why the first prince should know so much. In her opinion, if they wanted to kill the first prince as well, they should just tell him about the first and second skill so that he's not guarded against the third skill. However, Shiro only pointed back at the script since she had her own ideas. He can reduce your armor and defense to 0. The subordinate repeated with shock. Yeah, but don't worry. As long as we make him spend mana faster, we'll have an opportunity to end him. Are you able to put the first prince on the phone? Ah, sure. Your Highness, here, the branch master wishes to speak to you. Hello. The first prince's voice rang out. Nelder, are you able to get some support class users and help me drain his mana? It would be more beneficial for us. Plus, the second prince doesn't know the details, so it would be a perfect chance to trap him as well. Killing 2 birds, or rather, 2 princes with 1 stone. Oh, that's an interesting proposition. Thought it would take a while for the supports to come, so are you able to hold him in this location for now? It should be within my grasps. However, you should note that despite cleansing the debuffs every 5 seconds, it's still risky, so I would appreciate it if the help came as fast as possible. Of course, I wish you luck. Ending the call, Kiyomi looked at Shiro. Big sis, why did we tell him so much information? She asked. You see, by providing the correct information, we can sit by the side while he deals with Blythe. And just before he can kill Blythe, we'll go in and kill him instead, taking the EXP. If the second prince intervenes, we can take him on since he doesn't know what the executioner's requiem can do. Shiro smiled while putting her focus back on Cyril. Currently, they had managed to get the timing of the cleanse skill. If things go right, Shiro should be able to react accordingly within this second and avoid a fatal blow. If not, she can still use her rejuvenation skill and rewind the damage she suffered within the last 10 seconds. With this as her trump card, she basically has a second life as long as she's able to cast it before she's truly dead. Right then, Kiyomi, you'll be vanguard with me while Lisa will protect the other two. Our goal changed from killing him to just increase his mana expenditure, so if it gets a bit out of hand, feel free to just retreat as far as you can. Shiro said with a smile before summoning Ataraxia. Gesturing for Cyril to start using her skill to cleanse the debuffs, Shiro jumped up on the roofs with Kiyomi. While she could continue to use her illusions, it would be faster to drain his mana if the real one was mixed in every now and again. Remember, I'll attack first and you attack once his attention is on me. Shiro reminded. Are you sure? I can take the role as vanguard if you want. I'm higher level. Kiyomi furrowed her brows. Levels don't matter right now since he'll just reduce your armor to 0. Just trust me on this and follow closely. Shiro shook her head. Crouching down slightly, she waited for the next cleanse before jumping. After all, it would be awkward if she suddenly slipped a moment before jumping. Twisting her body in midair, she sent all 7 copies of Ataraxia shooting towards Blythe. All of the illusions followed suit and copied her actions along with the activation of refraction, making it seem like a storm of blades were about to pierce him. Narrowing his eyes dangerously, Blythe couldn't tell which one was the real sword, so his best option was to just stop them all. HAA. Clutching his fist, a giant tier 3 magic circle wrapped around him as a pulse of energy exploded outwards. Asterisk, boom. The real swords were suddenly hit by an explosion while the others were unaffected. Instantly locking onto the real Shiro who had thrown the swords, he charged towards her. So he found out about the real swords that easily, huh? Well, no matter, she thought to herself. Activating Celestial Raiment EX along with Hollow Deceit, she chose light as the base element in order to bolster her speed. Flickering away from her location, she reappeared beside him with her sword drawn. Sword Domain plus Azure Sword Path. Asterisk Pushi. Within a single moment, several shallow cuts appeared on the prince's body as Shiro clicked her tongue from the lack of damage. Without a moment's hesitation, she hopped backwards to avoid his attack since it would kill her in one hit. Kiyomi saw this and realized that it was a prime opportunity to land a hit on the prince as he was focused on Shiro. Flickering behind him, she was about to punch him with her flaming fish when her body controls suddenly changed. *T. The 1 second gap, she thought in annoyance. With her controls skewered for 1 second, she was open for the prince to attack her. Thankfully, Shiro commanded Ataraxia to lock down Blythe, giving Kiyomi the time she needed to escape. Glaring at the swords that were stopping his movements, Blythe activated another domain as the swords were pushed back by a force field. That second gap is a bit annoying. I'll have to go a bit more passive so that I can help Kiyomi avoid lethal damage. Unlike me, she doesn't have the rejuvenation skill. Wait, why would I need to go passive if I just make sure that his focus is on me? Shiro thought with a grin. Narrowing her eyes, she released Blythe from the makeshift sword prison. Flickering beside him with impressive speed due to her light element, she twisted her body and slashed towards his neck. Asterisk, dang. Blocking it with a barrier, Blythe reached out for Shiro. Kicking on the pommel of her sword, she flipped backwards before creating a bow of ice. Since she didn't want to use her Snowmancer class right now, she'll have to make do with magic weapons instead. The only problem is that they deal more magic damage rather than physical, so there was a high chance that Blythe can just ignore it with a barrier. Drawing back the mana threadbow string, a luminescent arrow formed between her fingers. Asterisk, boom. Firing the arrow just as her timer entered another 1 second gap, she allowed the force to push her back a little. Flicking his wrist upwards, Blythe created a barrier and reflected the attack back at Shiro. Troublesome, Shiro muttered. Just as the second gap finished, she flipped her body and dismantled the arrow. Since one large arrow wouldn't work, how about several small ones that would cancel out his barriers? While she cannot stop the executioner's requiem, Blythe's magic should be a piece of cake for her. Created a small ice platform for her to stand on, she pulled back on the strings once more. Only this time, she enhanced it with both light and her celestial path. Scatter. Firing the arrow, it split apart into hundreds of pieces while Shiro activated analysis to scan his magic so that she knows where to hit. Upon activation, the circuit patterns in her eyes started to glow with a red hue. If one was to look at her in the darkness, it would only look like a pair of menacing red eyes. Found it. Flexing her fingers slightly, the arrows started to curve and target the shield's weak points. Asterisk ping. Shattering it to countless pieces, some of the arrows had even managed to pierce his skin. Gah! Crying out in pain, the light element burned away at his flesh. Quickly pulling the arrows out, he glared at Shiro. This can't go on. I need to grab her. That's all I need, then I can kill her easily. Blythe thought to himself. Taking a deep breath, he used domains to enhance his own body. Asterisk boom. Taking a step forward, he instantly appeared before Shiro, who had widened her eyes in shock. T. Cursing loudly in her mind, she twisted her body and avoided his lethal jab to the head. If that had hit, even if she had the rejuvenation spell, she wouldn't be able to cast it. Making a condensed orb of mana in front of them, she detonated it quickly to force the two of them apart. Taking this chance to land a hit, Kiyomi jumped up behind Blythe before kicking him down into the ground. Asterisk bang. Seeing the ground crack and shatter from the collision, both Shiro and Kiyomi looked at each other before nodding. Civi, give us some buffs. Shiro ordered, since Civi was an enchantress. Right on it. Twirling her staff, several tier 3 magic circles rotated around her as Shiro got several notifications on her system. Buff received. Plus 20% crit chance. Plus 20% ignore armor. Plus 20% attack speed. Plus 25% attack/magic damage. Plus 20% movement speed. Damn, that's quite remarkable for someone who hasn't reached B rank yet. Shiro praised in her mind. Making herself a platform once more, she grinned wildly and dashed towards where Blythe had landed. Underleveled and against someone who can potentially one-shot kill me. Damn, this danger is exhilarating, she thought in excitement. Despite the risks, she just couldn't hold herself back from enjoying the moment. Making herself 2 ice daggers, Shiro stabbed towards Blythe, who parried with a staff. Come on, what's wrong? Can't hit me? What's the point of armor ignore if you can't hit me? Shiro taunted. Pivoting on her foot, she opened up a gap in his defense and flicked one of her daggers up into the air. Stabbing the first dagger in his stomach, she then roundhouse kicked the falling dagger on the pommel and sent it burrowing into his shoulder. Got you, little pest. Slamming his staff down, he tried to hit her with several spells, but she only jumped into the rift and dodged. Bypassing the second gap in the rift, she exited behind Blythe and wrapped her legs around his neck. Falling back into a handstand, she tensed her body and threw him into the air. Creating a bow once more, she fired it at his back. Asterisk ping. Shattering the shield that he hastily put up, the arrow pierced into his shoulder blade. Turning around to focus his attention on Shiro, he failed to realize that Kiyomi was about to land a hit on the arrow. Asterisk bang. Gah! The force of the punch not only allowed the arrow to pierce through his body, but also send him back down to Shiro, who was readying a kick. Making herself a nanotech ankle bracelet that enhanced her strength and magic damage, she narrowed her eyes and timed her roundhouse kick. Asterisk bang. Twisting her body so that she kicked the back of his neck in order to accelerate his speed into the ground, a shockwave exploded out with the impact. Asterisk boom. A huge cloud of dust exploded upwards as the ground shook from the impact. During the hit, she could clearly feel that she had broken, if not fractured, his bone. Before she could even rejoice, a black and red energy blade shot out from the smoke and pierced her heart. Expanding in size immediately, it ripped her left arm off along with a portion of her torso. Widening her eyes, she coughed up a mouthful of blood and fell backwards. No way he reached stage 4 already, she thought in disbelief. Executioner's Requiem Stage 4. Dark orbs will surround the user and attack with 200% speed whenever an opening presents itself, limited to every 10 seconds. Plus 300% mana regeneration. Quickly activating her rejuvenation skill, Shiro jumped up and grabbed Kiyomi into the rift. Her flesh was writhing around as it reconstructed itself. Just run. Don't fight him. He has mana regen and attacks now. Shiro shouted out into the earpiece with worry. Eh? Big sis, wasn't your chest just ripped apart then? Kiyomi asked as her face was a little pale. Emin, I got healed up, don't worry. However, I can't do this again for a while, so we need to get out of here quickly. Now that he's reached stage 4, I'm afraid there's no way we can beat him. Shiro shook her head while moving her newly regenerated left arm. Thankfully, her dress was made from monster cloth, so she didn't need to run around half naked. Preparing herself mentally, she jumped out the rift. Just as they exited, a flicker of black and red attacked them, and Shiro knew it was the item's skill. As much as she wanted to parry it, it has kept the effect gained from stage 3. A single touch would render her armor and defense to null. Therefore, her best bet was to just avoid it. Activating Phantom Path along with her Hollow Deceit, she traded places with one of her clones while Kiyomi rolled across the ground. Asterisk, bang. Missing the two of them, the blades returned back to Blythe's side. Let's go quickly before the duration refreshes, Shiro called out. Gesturing for Kiyomi to follow her, she dashed away. At the same time that this was happening, the trio, Lysandra, Cyril, and Civi, had already started to make their way out of the area. Since Shiro had shouted in such a panic, they knew that the situation was bad. Not only that, Lysandra was pretty sure that Shiro's HP had reached 0 before regenerating back to full. This is bad. I don't think Mum anticipated this outcome, Lysandra thought with a frown. At this point, even with the first prince's help, killing Blythe would be akin to a miracle. We don't want to go too far since my skill has a limited range of effect. Too far, and Shiro will be done for, Cyril reminded. Got it. However, they didn't need to worry about this since Shiro was running behind them. Kiyomi, are you able to ask your subordinate how much longer it will take the prince to arrive? Shiro asked as sweat dripped from her face. Even now, she was making ice weapons in order to push back Blythe so that he wouldn't kill them. Sure, I'll try. Kiyomi nodded. While Kiyomi was calling her subordinate, Nimue had spoke up about the possibility of Shiro using her Nanomancer class. With how things are right now, I won't be able to make a decent weapon without the blades killing me instantly. I need to focus on running until the meat shields arrive. Shiro replied with a shake of her head. They said they'll need around 3 to 5 minutes, big sis. Kiyomi called out. F***CK? Tell them to come in 1. Shiro retorted. Holding off for 1 minute was already a chore, never mind 5 minutes. Despite her links feeling like they were on the verge of breaking, she had continuously thrown out her reinforced ice weapons in order to slow him down. Even a few seconds would be appreciated at this point. If I use my Sylph Queen's Domain EX, Throne World and Frenzied Incarnation EX, I should be able to hold out for a lot longer. However, if I do that, once the timer is up for the Berserk skill, I'll be fish on a chopping board, unable to resist. She thought with a frown. Unless she can guarantee that she can take care of the danger within the time that her Berserk skill was active, there was no way that she was going to use it since it would only increase her chances of dying. They said they'll try to come as quickly as possible. Okay. Also, tell them about his 4th skill, Shiro instructed. Even though they were supposed to act as meat shields, it would do her no help if they just died blindly. She needed to make sure that their deaths were actually worth it. After informing her subordinate of the skill's description, Kiyomi stopped the call and put her phone away. How troublesome. If I knew the idiot was going to reach stage 4, I should have just got my hand cannon and shot him when we saw Morthal. Shiro thought with slight regret. Jumping into the rift with Kiyomi, she quickly dodged the blades once more. This game of cat and mouse continued for another minute, with Shiro sustaining injuries every second. While none of them were lethal, the sheer number of them made one pale in shock. Blood flowed out from each of her wounds, drenching her in her own blood. To make matters worse, she had already healed quite a few of the wounds through using her life fire. Say, Kiyomi, are they here yet? Shiro asked as her voice was rather weak. Currently, she had no more strength to run away, so she could only make her last stand through continuously making ice shields to protect them. But with Blythe's strength, they were easily shattered apart. I don't know, Kiyomi replied softly since she too was injured. While she could punch the blades away, doing so would also harm her since the backlash would fracture her bones without her armor and defense blocking the majority of the damage. Taking a deep breath, Shiro decided to have a last stand of sorts with the Blythe using her Nanomancer class. Kiyomi, can you keep a secret for me? Shiro asked seriously as her aura flared. ice continuously spread out in an attempt to slow down Blythe's charge. Of course, sis, anything for you. But considering our situation, I don't think I get the choice. Kiyomi chuckled sadly. Then I want you to forget about everything in the next 10 minutes, okay? Don't speak or ask questions of what happens next. Are you able to do that? Shiro asked while glancing back at her. Sure. After she got confirmation, despite it only being a verbal one, Shiro decided to go for it anyways. No point keeping a secret if she's going to be dead again. Lighting sparked around her as she created 2 versions of Genesis in her hands. Dropping the ice shields, she readied her guns and pulled the trigger. Asterisk bang bang. The bullets drilled against the blades and diverted their directions instantly. Jay, you had your fun, and now it's time for some revenge. Shiro glared at Blythe while twirling her guns. Dashing towards Blythe, Shiro activated her skill analysis and made sure to examine his muscle movements so that she could react in time. Not only that, she'll need to be careful of the blades, or else she'll die for good, without her rejuvenation skill helping her rewind her injuries. Looking at Shiro, who was constantly making guns and swords to fight against Blythe, Kiyomi couldn't help but widen her eyes in shock. It was common knowledge that bullets don't work on monsters due to the lack of mana, along with the fact that no one was able to fully integrate mana into the actual guns itself. However, this knowledge was shattered as Shiro continuously made a variety of guns and slowly pushed Blythe back despite many of her close calls. With shotguns, snipers, and even rail cannons being made every second, she had forced Blythe to be defensive. This made it so that she only needed to worry about the executioner's requiem. While she did try to get a few lethal blows in, Blythe would always use executioner's requiem and trade places with a clone, causing the shot to miss. While they looked like they were in a standstill, Shiro knew that she was going to lose within the next few moments. Despite all of her regeneration, she had less than 2 million mana left, which was not even 10% of her total mana. Once she gets below 1 million, she doubts she can continue to make effective weapons since the mana cost would be over her current budget. TCH, seems like it's the end, she thought in annoyance. However, despite this, she was going to struggle and fight on. Even if she loses an arm or a leg, as long as she can fight, she will. Thankfully, however, it seems like she didn't need to struggle much longer since the first prince had arrived with support. Quickly dismantling her hand cannons, Shiro flipped backwards and dragged Kiyomi into the rift. Since the first prince is here, there was a good chance that Blythe would target him instead of the 2 of them. The first prince is also in B class, so he should be able to put up a decent fight as long as he's able to hold off against his blades. Shiro thought to herself while running through the rift. Big sis, what was that? I thought guns don't work against monsters and people. Kiyomi asked curiously. Kiyomi, remember, I said no questions, right? Shiro frowned. All right. Kiyomi nodded, then stayed silent. However, questions still lingered in her mind since this was clearly abnormal. She knew that it wasn't metal magic since that wasn't able to create complicated things such as guns. Swords, maybe, but guns? Definitely not. It wasn't the work of her class either, since there was no such class capable of being able to create guns that she knew of. Plus, she had already used a few disguise nullification tools on Shiro just to make sure that everything she saw was real. With her class staying the same, Element Sage, it was clear to Kiyomi that Shiro was still a mage class adventurer. However, this was no time to question Shiro about the guns. That can be saved for after they survive Blythe's onslaught. Jumping out of the rift, Shiro saw that Blythe had already charged towards Nelder with the intent to kill and knew that this was their best and possibly the only time they had to leave. Quickly meeting up with Lysandra and the 2 supports, they left the zone. Meanwhile, Nelder gritted his teeth in shock and annoyance. He didn't expect that the moment Blythe saw him, he would charge at him with such aggression. With bloodshot eyes and a drooling mouth, he looked just like a beast that was out for blood. TCH, this is bad. Where's Kiyomi? Nelder asked while sending more swords in an attempt to restrain Blythe's movements as much as possible. No idea, Your Highness. The branch master seemed to have just disappeared after we arrived. I say she's probably trying to heal up some of her injuries since she was against this monster for a while after all. The executive replied while looking at Blythe with a mix of disgust and fear. Anyways, this isn't a problem that we can deal with alone. Get me someone who can contact my second brother. We'll have to form an alliance for now, or else everyone will die. Even now, my swords are getting snapped like toothpicks. Nelder frowned. Got it. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. Haha. Panting slightly, Shiro sat down on a nearby clock tower while Cyril healed her up quickly. Mom, did you die or something? I'm sure I saw your HP hit 0. Lysandra asked seriously while keeping an eye out on the current fight. Yeah, if I didn't have my skill, I would have died for sure. Shiro nodded her head. You're too reckless, Mom. You need to go all out and kill them whenever you can like you taught me. Lysandra sighed. I know, darling, I know. Shiro chuckled softly. She knew that she was a little reckless since she didn't want to expose her class too early. Doing so would pose lots of potential dangers. However, now that the cat's out of the bag, it was a good time to tell the existence of her class to other party members. Cyril, Civi, you two head back to the orphanage. We'll follow after you after sorting out this mess. Shiro said with a smile. Are you sure? If you get into its range, we can't help you. Cyril frowned. Yeah, don't worry. I got several ranged spells. Shiro nodded. Gesturing for Lysandra to take them back, it was just Shiro and Kiyomi on the clock tower. So what now? We can't exactly fight him anymore. Kiyomi asked. Not necessarily. With the first prince taking vanguard, I should be able to get a few good hits in. Plus, I should be able to make more effective weapons now that I can actually focus. Shiro smiled and crouched down. Pressing her hand against the floor, she closed her eyes and brought up the most powerful sniper she could make at this time. It needed to be one that ignored as much armor as possible along with the fastest bullet travel speed. After all, if the enemy just switches places with one of his illusion clones before the bullet could hit, the bullet would be useless. Looking at the nanobots that spread out from her hand, Kiyomi quickly backed away in shock. Big sis, what is that? She asked while making sure that she didn't touch it. After all, who would want to touch this black and silver goo which writhed around constantly? Just think of it as my second class. I have 2 classes, one is a mage and the second is this. I can make weapons that are enhanced by mana, making it highly effective against monsters and humans alike. Shiro smiled and revealed the truth. Of course, she hid some details, but Kiyomi didn't need to know about that. After going through the parts that she had stored in her database, she grabbed all the ones that had the highest compatibility and fused it together into a finalized blueprint. Normally, this would only be an experimental weapon that didn't work unless she ran it through several stages of testing. However, since she had used finalized parts against a base blueprint, the outcome was a guaranteed success. That being said, in order to trade for a guaranteed success, it doesn't have the best stats that I've seen. I'd give it a barely passable grade. Shiro thought to herself as the sniper constructed itself. Fitted with a rather decent accelerator along with several coils to increase the mana it can contain, the bullet speed of this sniper was on a whole new level. With the sniper finished, she made herself a tripod and laid her body on the ground. Looking through the scope, she activated her analysis skill and tried to see if she could see his muscle movements like usual. It works, she thought with a smile. Now that she's able to see his movements, it was a perfect chance for her to get a lot of damage in. Kiyomi, you want a sniper too? I can make one for you. Shiro offered. Sure, why not? I've had fun firing a gun before anyways. Now that they don't work against humans or monsters, they're mostly used for sport. Kiyomi nodded as Shiro flexed her fingers and made a second sniper just for her. You want to be a bit more careful since the recoil is pretty strong on this gun. Got it, sis. As much as she wanted to continue questioning, it seemed like Shiro didn't want to say more since she just brushed it aside. There's more to this than amnesia. Or else how would sis get a second class like this? If the government knew, they would no doubt force her to answer since the existence of guns that can harm monsters will help the lower levels so much. Unfortunately, it would also mean people can kill each other much easier in the lower levels. Kiyomi thought with concern. Asterisk bang. Cutting off her thoughts, Shiro's sniper fired a bullet that left a slight trail of light and penetrated deeply into Blythe's arm. Asterisk KCH. Ting. Loading up the second bullet, Shiro didn't waver and pulled the trigger. Now that Blythe had his guard down, she had to capitalize on the opening that her first bullet opened up. As for the first prince, while he didn't know what had happened, he knew that he needed to act fast. Snapping his fingers, An array of swords materialized in the sky and stabbed towards Blythe. With all of the attacks coming towards him, the only thing left on Blythe's mind was to survive. Take it all. Everything. As long as I can survive and everyone dies right here and now. He shouted out, much to the confusion of those around him. Black mist erupted out around him as his body started to bloat and change. Not this time, B*TCH. Shiro muttered and created a small chip before inserting it into her sniper. There was no way in hell was she about to let him enter stage 5. Plus, Blythe would be at his weakest between each transition phase, so this was the best opportunity for her. Boom. After inserting the chip, a giant tier 3 magic circle expanded out from under her, while several layers of magic circles wrapped around the barrel. Feeling the rampant mana surging towards Shiro, Kiyomi was surprised that a C-classed adventurer could even cause such a phenomenon. Ignoring the pain from her links, Shiro even activated her berserk to ensure that this bullet was going to be lethal. Pulling the trigger, the sniper instantly shattered into dust while the force of the bullet sent both Shiro and Kiyomi flying away from the clock tower. Bang. Before anyone realized, Blythe's head was completely erased along with everything else behind him. Ignoring her level-up notification, Shiro dismantled her sniper and dashed towards the corpse. She quickly donned a new outfit and mask while making 2 hand cannons. After all, they didn't need to know it's her. Hiding her hair color along with her name tag, she made sure that no one knew her true identity. Big sis, wait. Kiyomi called out. She didn't even get to try her sniper after all. Just stay back. This berserk skill isn't exactly the kindest for my allies. Shiro replied quickly since she could feel her killing intent increase with every passing second. It would be better that she uses it on her enemies while claiming the corpse than to be near her friends. Quickly throwing an earpiece at Kiyomi, she dived into the rift and reappeared near the first prince's reinforcements. Fu. Breathing out deeply, she leapt into the air and aimed her guns at the ones closest to Blythe's corpse. Bang bang bang. Firing a few shots with optimal accuracy, she blew their heads right off their shoulders. Intruder, one of the adventurers shouted out. The first prince was the first one to react as he sent several swords shooting towards her. However, Shiro only scoffed at the attempt. Pivoting on her foot, she parkoured her way from blade to blade and used them as her platforms to increase her speed. Without saying a second word, she flipped herself in midair and aimed her gun towards the prince's head. Normally, she wouldn't be able to pull this off, but with the berserk skill further boosting her stats by 150%, she was almost 3 times as strong as what she would be normally. Bang. Ping. Quickly blocking the bullet with one of his swords, the first prince was sent sliding backwards from the force. Hard sword. Shiro thought to herself while collecting the loot. Get her. Don't let her get that item. Nelder shouted out in anger and confusion. The main reason was why a bullet could even pose such a danger to him when it was common knowledge that guns were obsolete now. With the giant corpse fading away, it was revealed that Shiro was surrounded by tens if not hundreds of adventurers, all under the command of the first prince. Don't waste any words and just kill her, the first prince commanded. He wasn't about to negotiate since he'd get her entire inventory the moment she is killed. Plus, she had made an attempt on his life, so such actions required him to return the favor. Clack. Flicking a switch on her hand cannons, Shiro narrowed her eyes and grinned. KRRRR. With her blood lust going at full throttle, her surroundings started to freeze. Naturally, humans were no exception. With the nearby adventurers frozen by her magic, it was only a matter of shooting still targets for Shiro. A simple walk in the park, one that resulted in the blood of dozens being spewed everywhere. Bang 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 bang. Firing her guns without a moment's rest, Shiro made sure that her footwork was also activated so that they would ignore her presence until the next shot. Looking at the frantic battlefield, Nelder couldn't help but feel fear. Sure, a giant 100-meter-tall monstrous form of his third brother was scary since he could kill you instantly, but having a small target that you couldn't keep tabs on was practically nightmare fuel. Mages, use your control spells. Tanks, get your area taunts ready. He commanded since the battlefield needed to be put under control if they wanted to survive. Boo. Shiro grinned as she appeared before him. Her blood-red eyes glowed slightly due to the effects of her skill as well as analysis. Shooting both his kneecaps, Shiro forced the prince down on the ground before rotating behind him and aimed her barrel next to his head. Asterisk, boom. Before she could shoot, a barrier expanded outwards and stopped her from killing him. A pity, barriers are worthless against me. Shiro laughed. Focusing her sight on the barrier's composition, she changed her second-hand cannon into a dagger before throwing it at the weak link. Asterisk, ping bang. Timing it so that the bullet would bypass the barrier just as it broke apart, she managed to rip a chunk of his cheek right off his face. TCH, aims a little off due to the barrier's initial rebound. Shiro frowned and aimed her gun once more. Unfortunately, a lance appeared in her peripherals before she had a chance to shoot. Asterisk, bang. Shocked at the sudden sniper bullet that shattered the lance in half, Shiro took this moment to fire a bullet into Nelder's skull. Level up. Don't worry, big sis, I got your back. I'm pretty good at shooting, you know. Kiyomi's cheeky voice rang out over the earpiece as Shiro could only smile. Let's get a little crazy then, sis. Shiro replied and added sis at the end after a little hesitation. Since Kuromi told her to look after Kiyomi and that she was living at her now, she might as well accept the fact that Kiyomi was going to be her sister from now on. Gunshots and blood flew everywhere in the battlefield as they were being dominated by two gunners. With Kiyomi's inexperience as a sniper, Shiro had to remind her to change locations. Since she was able to redirect a lot of her killing intent to her enemies, she was able to avoid the thought of firing her guns towards Kiyomi. Of course, it wasn't as if her willpower was weak for her to actually be taken over like this. Since the adventurers weren't dumb enough to actually stay around, it had forced Shiro to chase them around the area, limiting the amount of kills that she could have gotten. Glancing down at her timer, Shiro frowned when she realized that it was almost time for the berserk skill to wear off. TCH, and I'm only just getting into the groove of things. She thought with a sigh. Kiyomi, we'll stop here. My timer's about to run out, and the moment the backlash hits, I'll be dead meat. Shiro called out before leaving through the rift. Of course, she didn't forget to leave behind a little farewell gift just to get a few more kills in. Mana Pulse Grenade, enhanced. Asterisk, boom. Just as she entered the rift, a pulse of energy exploded out and evaporated everything in its path. Those that tried to put up barriers noticed that the mana in the air was too rampant to even control, much less make a barrier with. The only outcome for them was naturally death. What was that, big sis? Kiyomi asked after seeing the Mana Pulse Grenade wreak havoc. That? Just a little taster of what's to come when I become higher leveled. Shiro replied with a smile. Damn, if I didn't know any better, I'd say your second class is equal to or better than your main class. Are you sure this is what a subclass can do? Kiyomi asked with a raised eyebrow. Yeah, just think of it as a mechanic class. Shiro shrugged. Before she could say anything else, she felt her chest tighten as she collapsed on the ground. With bloodshot eyes and blood flowing out of her mouth, Shiro's body shivered intensely from the pain, but she wasn't able to say a single word. Big sis, Kiyomi cried out in shock and quickly hauled Shiro on her back. Seeing her face twist in pain from even the simplest movement, Kiyomi knew that this was the backlash of her berserk skill. However, despite her time as the branch master, she had never seen a berserk skill that had such a reaction on the host. Damn, this better not have any long-lasting effects, Kiyomi thought to herself while carrying Shiro away from the battlefield. ####. What the F*** CK happened during the time we were on our way here? The second prince asked in disbelief when he saw the state of the northern area. Corpses and blood marks could be seen everywhere, while a ghastly crater was discovered not too far from the northern watchtower. It seems like the first prince was ambushed by a third party after the third prince was killed. We've managed to get some footage of what happened, but it's rather short. One of the adventurers had been streaming the fight on the net before it was cut off, signaling his death. Pulling out the tablet, the subordinate showed the second prince the clip. Looking at the clip, which revealed a flickering shadow which seemed to hold two guns and kill people like they were ants, the second prince paled. Seeing how his first brother was dealt with so easily, the only thought he had on his mind was to flee this country. He did not feel safe at all with an existence like this not too far from where he was. Spread the news. Get the authorities to come here and help. Use those weapons as an excuse that things should be restrained when the government gets here. The second prince instructed hastily before leaving the area. Little did he know, the thing is currently in critical condition within the first aid area at the orphanage. You are groaning slightly. Shiro's actions caused Lyrica to quickly walk over to her side. Are you feeling better, Shiro? Lyrica asked in worry since when Kiyomi had brought her to them. Shiro was completely covered in blood and shivered continuously. I guess. Shiro replied slowly since it hurt quite a bit to even talk. Looking down at herself, she realized that she was wrapped from head to toe in bandages. What happened? Is this because of the backlash of my skill? She asked while trying to sit up. However, Lyrica shook her head and had her lay her body back down. Yes, it is. That being said, why is the backlash so strong? Your internal organs were heavily wounded along with fractures along the majority of your bones. If not for your passive regeneration and the help of Sylvia and Cyril, there was a chance that you might have died. I see. I suppose having a berserk skill that will make you almost 3 times as strong will do that to you. Shiro chuckled before flinching from the pain. Just rest for now. We'll catch you up on what happened later. Lyrica sighed and made her way out of the room. She needed to inform the others that Shiro had woken up. Watching Lyrica leave, Shiro smiled softly before shaking her head. Nimue, you there? Yes, I am. Please refrain from using that berserk skill if you can, for both your sake and mine. Nimue's tired voice rang out. Why? Damn it. Do you know how much I needed to do in order to make sure your links didn't get snapped halfway through the fight? Your berserk skill makes you ignore a certain amount of pain in that duration, which includes your links. If I wasn't here, your links would have been shattered once more. Nimue shouted out in protest. I was wondering why I was able to use my guns so easily despite having felt pain earlier in the fight. Shiro thought nonchalantly. Pucci. Oi, I'll hit you, you know. Please stop making my job harder. You've only repaired it by 7%, so please bear in mind that you need to be careful of how much mana you use, okay? She sighed. Got it. I'll ask Chinyu about getting more rebirth pills from Nantion. While I do have the recipe for Borealis rebirth, I'm not able to get the ingredients yet. Shiro shook her head. With how many super rare materials that the Boreas rebirth needed, there was no doubt that strong beasts will be guarding nearby so that they can consume it for themselves. There are only so many materials in the world. Who knows when I'll be able to get them? Perseverance, my queen. Also, even if we can't get the Boreas rebirth, can't you stick with the Phoenix rebirth pills to get your percentage higher? True. Anyways, enough of that. I need to see how much I leveled up after that little stun earlier. Looking at her level and stats, Shiro widened her eyes in surprise. Name: Shiro, weakened, for days. Race: Mystic Fae. Title: Advanced Monster, 312 out of 1,000 humans killed. Fratricide: Creator of the Frozen Hell series. Incomplete. Creator of Een-Style Azura's Path. Seeker of Truths. Revolutionary. Element Empress EX. Level: 95. Class: Mystic Sylph Queen, SSS. Ascendant Nanomancer, EX. HP: 1000, 000/10, 312, 500, weakened. MP: 5,000/22, 281, 250, weakened. STR: 60,000. VIT: 55,000. INT: 100,000-115,000 plus 5, 750. AGI: 65,000. Dex: 50,000. Def: 35,000. Equals title bonus, 50%. Tears of the Sylph Queen plus 5% INT. Armor equals armor passive. Unassigned points, 15,000-0. Attunements: Astral Ice, Tier 3. Lightning, Tier 3. Metal, Tier 3. Shadow, Tier 3, augmented with Calamity's Will. Dark Star, Tier 3. Light, Tier 3. Fire, Tier 3. Wind, Tier 3. Earth, Tier 3. Water, Tier 3. Wood, Tier 3. Balance: 57 silver errands, 247 bronze errands, 5.24 trillion US dollars. Skills: Mystic Sylph Queen. Elemental Breath, Fey Illusions, Force of Elements, Celestial Raiment EX, Tier 3 Element Magic. Rift Strider EX, Sylph Queen's Domain EX, Monster Skill, Rejuvenation EX, Frenzied Incarnation EX, Basic Elemental Mastery, Spirit Assistance. Snowmancer, Nanotech Engineering Tier 3, Analysis. Frozen Hell Series. Frozen Slumber, Azure Hell Fire, Borealis Lance, Frozen Chandelier. Ancient Healing Arts. Fire of Life, Path of Ascendance, Phantom Path, Azura Sword Path, Celestial Path, Berserker Path. Sword Skills. Refraction, Sword Domain. Other. Minimap, Inspection, Disguise, Mana Barrier, Combust, Heavenly Constellation, Aurora, Chimera Arts, Myriad Transformations Throne World, Hollow Deceit. Shared Skills, Dark Star Empowerment, Tier 3, Ice Chain, Tier 3, Shadow Cloak, Tier 3, Dark Star Seraphim, Tier 3. In a single night, she had increased her level to 95, while her armor has become useless due to the fact that she was more than 5 levels higher than the base level. She could easily take it to Hell Ion and see if she could upgrade it. Plus, with the amount of loot she had stuffed into her inventory due to the third prince, she should have more than enough. The only regret that she had was the fact that she never got to collect the first prince's corpse. With his authority and size of his group, there was no doubt that he would have possessed a lot of good items. Shaking her head, she ignored it for now and focused on the 2 new skills that she got with her level up. Both of the skills were passives that enhanced her combat. The first was Basic Elemental Master. With this skill, she now gained access to the basic elements that make up the foundation of every mage. Looking at her stats, she could see the addition of Tier 3 Fire, Wind, Earth, Water, and Wood attunements. With 11 elements under her control, both her Celestial Raiment EX and Ataraxia gained a significant boost. From the initial 7 swords, she could now make 12 swords, 1 for each element and 1 for the base sword. As for the second skill, Spirit Assistance, as long as there is a large body of elemental spirits nearby, her spells will become supercharged and deal more damage. The best part about this skill was that it wasn't limited to spirits that had gained a physical form and sentience. It included those that were in the process of maturing. One such example would be if she was in the middle of a lava pool, any fire-type magic she uses would become supercharged. I suppose it only makes sense that the Queen of Spirits can use every element. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What if there was an advanced elemental master, or maybe even a complete elemental master skill? Shiro thought with a smile. That's obvious. The previous queens have all received the advanced elemental master skill, meaning they were the worst opponents for any mage. However, despite their levels and talent, none were able to get a complete elemental master, so I'm not even sure such a skill exists. Nimue shrugged, but inside she felt proud. Shiro was finally shaping up to be a proper Sylph Queen with these skills under her belt. Unfortunately, whether or not she is willing to sit down and look after the kingdom was another question that Nimue didn't want to think about right now. All that matters is that Shiro reestablishes the power of the spirits so that they weren't hunted down to become batteries anymore. Well, that just gives me something to strive for, isn't it? There's no better feeling than to do something your predecessors could not. Shiro smiled. After talking to Nimue a little more, she decided to look at the cursed relic. As much as she wanted to recycle it and gain its skills, the curses follow with the skill and would slowly corrupt her mind and soul. Therefore, the best option was to destroy it completely. To destroy this relic, I'll have to get it to the church and weaken its corruption first. After all, without proper holy water to weaken the corruption to a certain extent, the relic would only repair itself over time. Shiro thought with a frown. Thankfully, with the elder's support, she should be able to gather some holy water without too much hassle. For the next few days, Shiro focused on recovery while the party set out to help clean up. However, for some unknown reason, the second prince couldn't be found, so people could only guess that he had forfeited his chance at being the king. With only the fourth prince left along with 3 princesses, it was only natural that the people assumed the fourth prince would ascend as king. Little did they know, Shiro had other plans since it was clear that he had no such desire. Meanwhile, the government officials had arrived on the 5th day after the conflict. Let's see, my body's pretty much recovered except for some muscle fatigue, Shiro said while giving her body a stretch. I'm surprised how much you've recovered. Even if it's due to the backlash's time limit, Your injuries were pretty ghastly, you know. Lyrica chuckled. I suppose so. By the way, has Kiyomi said anything about the faction? I did accidentally kill quite a few of her subordinates after all. Shiro smiled embarrassingly. As much as she wanted to save Kiyomi's subordinates, she wasn't in the situation to pick who her enemies were. Everyone in front of her was an enemy at that point. Now we haven't heard too much from her yet. I'm thinking it has a lot to do with the amount of files she needs to complete in order to round everything off. After all, the casualties for the fight is huge. Lyrica shrugged. Anyways, do you want to visit her in her faction branch? The rest of the party are busy with helping out everyone, and there's not much we can do anyways. Shiro suggested with a smile. Sure, I'm fine with that. Getting dressed in a casual one-piece dress that she had in her inventory, Shiro grabbed a hat along with a lower face veil. So any reasons as to why you're dressed like this? Laika asked. Not that she was complaining after all. Well, I can't be dressing in black all the time. Plus, I've become a little famous on the net due to the stunt I pulled. Shiro chuckled. During the 5 days of rest that she's had, she saw how famous she had become on the net. In both low levels and high levels, it was unheard of to use a gun this effectively. Everyone was asking if this was an experimental weapon or not, and some even questioned the legitimacy. However, once the news about Muriel's war spread out, all doubts were cast aside. After all, the carnage and death counts couldn't be faked. There were several nicknames that people gave her, and quite a few of them made her blush in embarrassment. Shrouded Gunner, Gun Goddess, and the most common, Rogue Assassin. No one knew of her identity, but there were people coming into Muriel just to see if they had the chance to get a glimpse of her. Hell, some of them had even managed to recreate replicas of her guns for anyone that wanted them. Seeing the replicas of her guns reminded her quite a bit about the gun market back in Aria. Back then, these guns were being shipped all over the place. The hero and I had to go through quite the ordeal to shut down the biggest illegal outlets, but could never get rid of them. Hopefully, that doesn't happen in this world, or else the lower-level adventurers would be bloodier, especially at the auction nights. Shiro thought with a shake of her head. That's humans for you. Give them a hint of anything that can be used as a weapon, and their primeval nature surfaces. Even if you try your best at stopping the use of such weapons, they'll either find a way to use it or find an alternative. Seeing you use your guns, there's no doubt that people will start to research guns a lot more. What you've done earlier may just be the catalyst to something greater. You just don't know it yet. Nimue replied with a chuckle. Well, look at you being all philosophical. I suppose you don't like the fact that I exposed such a dangerous weapon. Not really. In fact, I'm quite happy. With the guns becoming a priority, the humans will be too busy dealing with each other rather than dealing with the spirit race. This should give my race some years to relax and not worry about being captured. Nimue shrugged. Much like Shiro, she wasn't a saint. She was just a selfish spirit that didn't care much for other races as long as hers survived. It's inevitable, I suppose. Shiro muttered with a soft smile. What's inevitable? Lyrica asked since she was curious as to why Shiro said that all of a sudden. Nothing much. Just the fact that I have to face my body's old family again. Since I've met the sister, I should probably meet the parents sooner or later. Shiro replied. True. What are you going to do about that? I mean, amnesia can only do so much. If they run tests on you, wouldn't they find out that you're, Lyrica furrowed her brows. I'll cross that bridge when it comes. Right now, I want to finish up with this country. I'm thinking of letting Cyril become queen since you don't want to. With some guidance from the elders, I'm sure she'll be a decent ruler. Plus, the fourth prince can support her. Haha, Shiro, are you sure you're not just pushing your work to the elders? Lyrica laughed. Am I that shameless? Yes. Yes, you are. If you can stab a man's ass, you can push work onto someone else. Lyrica replied with a smile. I can't argue with that. But yeah, there's not much we can do. There are no suitable candidates, so they can only nurture one from the ground up. The fourth prince is out. Same with Civi since they both have no interest. With you coming with us, that only leaves Cyril if we want to keep the current system, albeit some minor adjustments. She's also a half-vampire, making her life span many times longer. We're here. Arriving at the branch office of the Rising Sun, Shiro noted that it looked almost the same as the guild buildings, except some changes around the edges to make it aligned with the faction. Walking inside, She told the receptionist that she had an appointment with the branch leader. Miss Shiro, our branch leader is currently in an emergency meeting. If you want, you may wait in the private rooms for her to finish. The receptionist replied apologetically. No worries. Can I trouble you with showing us the way? Shiro asked with a smile. Of course, follow me. Following behind the receptionist to the private waiting room, Shiro sat down and placed her hat back in her inventory. Crossing her legs, she took out what seems to be a cup of tea. Huh, never knew you liked tea. Lyrica couldn't help but mutter. Oh, this isn't tea. Shiro shook her head. It isn't? What is it then? It's just some juice that I found. It's quite nice, want to try? Shiro offered. I'm fine, but why is it in a teacup? Haha, well, drinking it in a teacup along with my current attire makes me seem quite refined, no? Shiro smiled and crossed her legs. Setting the teacup on the side, she started to look on the web while waiting for Kiyomi to come. Let's see. What else do I need to do in this country? I need to first get Azul out of her prison and deal with that world tree sapling. After that, I'll need to see if I can get Helion to upgrade my armor for me. That way, I don't waste such a good set effect. She thought to herself. Leaning back slightly, she then wondered where she should go next. Ever since they left New York, it wasn't exactly their choice in which area they go to. It was either due to evacuation or the faction. I suppose I'll need to level up to 100 first and reach B rank. After that, I can go look for Yuki. After waiting for a short while, Kiyomi finally entered the private waiting room looking very tired. You okay? Shiro asked while raising an eyebrow. Yeah, just some government officials coming to question me about what happened. They found out that I had been fighting Blythe during the time that the first prince was preparing, so they hoped that I had some idea about a certain rogue assassin that had used a pair of guns. Kiyomi said with a grin. URG, you know I don't like the nickname. Shiro sighed as Kiyomi laughed. Haha, I know. Don't worry though. I sent them away saying that I was in critical condition and needed to recover. So enough of that. What brings you here today, sis? Well, I'm just here to visit you since you've been quite busy. Plus, everyone else is helping out with cleaning up the city after the fight. Shiro shrugged. So in the end you're bored and decided to visit your sister, huh? Kiyomi laughed. Basically. Lyrica sighed. Well, why don't you try to do some dungeons? Isn't this the perfect time? You're almost level 100 and the princes are no longer overlooking the high-level dungeons. Kiyomi suggested while sitting down. I suppose so. Well, ignoring that for now, what are your plans now, Kiyomi? Shiro asked. I think I'm probably going to make my way back to Japan and meet up with cousin. We need to see her, remember? Right? Yuki did say that, didn't she? Shiro nodded after a short pause. In the letter that Yuki had given Kiyomi, she had mentioned that she sent a letter to Keiko as well. Where is the headquarters anyways? I can go find you over there when I finish my business. Shiro asked. Oh, it's in Tokyo. However, would it be okay if I follow you for a while? I haven't seen you in such a long time after all. Kiyomi asked with an expectant smile. Sure, I don't see why not. After talking for a little longer, Shiro returned to the castle with the two of them since she wanted to speak to Azul. Telling them to go on without her, she arrived back in the room where the world tree resides. Yo, I'm back. Shiro called out. You finally returned. Are your injuries fully healed? I saw your fight against that monster. Azul replied with concern. Don't worry about that, haha. I've had 5 days to fully recover. Shiro chuckled. Looking over at the world tree, who seemed rather docile now, she saw that it reached with its roots as if it was asking for more food. You want nutrients again? Shiro asked curiously. Shaking his roots up and down, it tried to emulate a nodding motion. Have some then. Shiro shrugged and sent over a wisp of life fire. Absorbing the fire happily, the roots danced with joy. Ignoring the tree for now, Shiro activated her flight skill and flew up into the air. Let's see. Nimue, Azul, you have any ideas on how I can get you out? She asked. Honestly, I'd say it's just a matter of feeding the world tree enough nutrients so that it leaves Azul alone. Nimue replied. What about you, Azul? Do you have any ideas? Not really. I've been here for as long as I can remember, so I don't know how to get out. Azul replied with a sigh. Narrowing her eyes, Shiro thought about the implications that her actions would bring. The main reason that the tree is using Azul as a battery is because it needed nutrients. Not only that, but the world tree also powers the barrier around the capital. Once she gets Azul out, the barrier would most likely crumble. I need something to preserve the barrier after Azul is gone, she thought to herself. Flexing her fingers, she created a mana collector just to test out one of her theories. If she could have the mana collector act in Azul's place, she should be free to remove her from the world tree. Jumping down, she placed the collector next to the world tree and turned it on. Use this to get some energy and see how it is, she said as the tree obeyed. Wrapping its roots around the device, it started to absorb mana using it as a catalyst. It's working, but the absorption rate is a little too fast for the collector. Unless I have a room full of these, I doubt it can suffice. However, if I get a full room, there is no doubt that the elders would find it, and there will be a chance that they'll use it for something else. Shiro muttered with a frown. Looking at the collector, she could see it breaking apart with every passing second. Why don't you just borrow the world tree, form a contract with it, and absorb it into your mana realm? That way, you can keep it fueled with the life fire, Nimue suggested. There are a few problems with that, but first, I can do that. Second, last time the world tree absorbed my mana, my links were in danger, remember? And third, what about the barrier around this place? It would be problematic if the elf's holy relic disappeared all of a sudden. Shiro replied with a shake of her head. Well, you can make a contract since the world tree should be at least equal or higher grade than a phoenix, right? As for your mana links, I'm sure that if you make it sign a lifeblood contract, it should keep you alive, Nimue replied. Nah, it's too much risk having something like that inside me. Also, what if we're in a situation where it needed to grow into the next stage and had to absorb mana? If it was outside of its control, it would kill us both. And that's a risk I'm not willing to take since I've seen it happen before. Shiro shook her head. If that situation did happen, she wouldn't be able to survive. That's true. Then what shall we do? I'm thinking of doing something called mana tax for the country. People regenerate mana all the time, so if they were to donate some every day, they can feed this world tree and perhaps even speed up its growth, Shiro said after a short pause. This was similar to what she had done way back in the Shadow Temple trial, since she had asked the citizens to donate their mana for her to build the mana nuke. If she was to recreate that situation here, they'll be free to take Azul without damaging the city too much. That could work. Azul, I'll be right back. I'm going to tell this to the elders and have them impose this new rule. That way, we can get you out safely, Shiro called out. All right, I await your good news. Have a safe trip, Azul replied with a smile. Leaving the room, Shiro left the castle to look for the elders. Once she found them, she suggested this new rule so that the world tree could grow faster. I don't see why not. We have a lot of people not doing anything with that mana, so that's fine. Though we'll have to make sure we don't take too much though. One of the elders shook her head. That's fine. Just think of it this way. We'll gather 10 to 15% of their total mana into a catalyst every day and give it to the world tree. It's either that or we take it from them every week. With the amount of people in this country, I'm sure it's sustainable, Shiro suggested with a smile. She's right. That spirit has only offered to help sustain the tree since there were no other options. Plus, she's only there because of Lyrica's father. Now that he's gone and we have an alternative, I think it's about time we let her go. Another elder sighed. Very well. We'll give this suggestion a 2-week trial period. If it proves to be sustainable, we'll continue with it. However, little did they know, even if it wasn't possible, Shiro would force them to try harder. After all, she wasn't about to let Azul stay in a state of mana deficiency for much longer. They can just tax it from all over the country if needs be, she thought to herself. While the elders started to implement this rule, Shiro had made her way to the church in order to try to get her hands on some holy water. Unfortunately, the average holy water wouldn't do since it would be too weak to actually have an effect on the relic. She needed some of the higher quality water, which was in very limited supplies. Since she needed a genuine reason to get the water, the first thing she thought of was to approach the priest dressed as her rogue assassin attire and tell him about the relic. That way, there was a higher chance of getting what she needed. Walking into an alley near the church, Shiro changed her outfit and arrived at the priest's office through the rift. Sitting down on the sofa, she crossed her legs and waited for the priest to return.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.